This is Thompson, the DM for the Dice City podcast, and we had a question from @FreemanRMS at our Twitter account, Dice City Podcast, and Shane wants to know, using Shadar-Kai in Next Adventure, they speak Shadow Speak with each other. What accent do you recommend when speaking Common? And I think that is an interesting question because I put a lot of time and thought into which voices I'm going to use. Now, whether I execute well is kind of up to you guys to decide. But it is interesting when you sort of, okay, this is a completely different race. This is a completely different experience and a perspective that is unknown to us as humans on Earth in 2018. So the Shadar-Kai are associated with the Shadowfell, which is a result of when Shar arranged Mystra's death, and they took the negative energy plane and the plane of shadow and created the Shadowfell. And the Shadar-Kai have a shadow curse, and they're doomed to lose their souls in the dark powers of the Shadowfell. So they are. It's very literal. It's literal and figurative, most likely, where they're actually losing a thing called a soul because it's being leached away by the necrotic energies of the Shadowfell. But they are also their souls are probably always in jeopardy. They're losing that part of themselves that makes them have humanity, such as we might call it. So. I wouldn't actually look at it like a matter of accent, Shane. I would look at it more about how they would behave. What would their attitude be like? So first, if it's just accent, I would go for something probably Slavic, Eastern European. Most of my Russian style kind of is a hit from old movies. So it would be something like this. I would do something that has I'm from someplace between Hungary and Russia that does not exist. Just because they're gloomy places, and I'm sorry for any Hungarians who see this, but Eastern Europe has kind of a pall on it in my mind, so that's what pops up. But I think the more important part is in the description on the Forgotten Realms wiki, where it says that the Shadow Curse has sapped their will to live and filled their hearts with ennui, melancholy, and utter sadness. And so in order to avoid being affected by the curse, they live extreme lifestyles and embrace strong emotions and peak experiences. So they are very into emotional vacillation. They put their lives in danger. And so to me, I think to separate them from something that's a bit more maniacal, my thought immediately is to have their voices be heavily neutral. And so every bit of fluctuation matters a lot. So the baseline is something like this. Now, this isn't actually, when I first read about it, I was like, shadow people, and I was a weirdo walking down the streets of New York going, why did you dare come into my lair? And then like that kind of shifted to Shadow Demon, which was more like, oh, so you wish to fight me? But once I read about them, it's like, that doesn't really work. So I would cling to this idea that they have something that's ripping away their soul. And so every bit of emotional vacillation comes with great difficulty. And if you have, for instance, let's go with a barbarian, so somebody who's got a slightly deeper voice, but every time that he changes it shifts, and he throws little emotional punches into it. And then if he gets angry, like just little bits where where you hint at that seeking of peak experiences. And maybe if like that same barbarian, if he gets a crit on a PC or you're he's an NPC and he gets a crit on a bad guy, then maybe he like really loses his shit and just goes or like even weirder, because again, part of it is they're not human, so you want to capture kind of an otherworldliness. So maybe an emotional shift we can't even appreciate. So something like from a character who has a much deeper voice. So just again, if I had to use an accent, I would probably go with something a bit toward Russian, Eastern European, and I would take a lot of the punch out of my voice and have them talking like this. The thing is, I would also use something like that for vampires. So I think one of the keys is to think about the characters, whatever the intensity of the character's emotion that he or she is trying to bring to bear. So if it's anger, if it's sadness, if it's revenge, and it's an acting challenge, and I don't know if I'm up to it, and you might not be, but it would be like have that like boiling behind the eyes, but not changing that register except at very, very crucial moments. So the same barbarian who is I'm impressed that you have made it to see me yourselves. Everything else was a test. So what I'm trying to do, and maybe I'm not succeeding, I don't know. I mean, but it's the idea of like just anger and rage behind the eyes. And maybe if I was in front of my group, I'd be able to sort of conjure it more readily. But that's where I would go with it. Your mileage may vary, and also if you don't agree, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're listening to this, if you watch this, and you've got your own damn opinions about how the Shadar-Kai sound, I'd love to hear it, because I have no idea what I'm doing when I come up with these, and I find the whole exercise very interesting. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any other questions that you think would be fun for me or anybody else at Dice City to answer, hit us up.